If you have a QR code.
It was a difficult
thing.
Back then, a child's chances of surviving into adulthood were only 50%. Arthur and Olivia had 21 children.
Wow.
Mrs. Lydia Guinness gave birth to 21 children. That means that for nearly 16 years of her life she was pregnant. What a woman. Now, I said that a child's chances weren't good back then. Arthur and Olivia buried 11 of their children. 11. 10 were tough, 10 were lucky, and it was those 10 who would carry the Guinness name forward, who would make Guinness what it is today. Yep, Olivia, Mrs. Arthur Guinness, mother of the Black Stuff.
Risk taker. Put it on the horses. Can't see into the future. I think Arthur would though. Anyway, he must have known something. Else he was cracked. Buying a run-down old brewery is one thing, but he signed a 9,000-year lease. I mean, that's not just dipping your toe in the water, is it? Arthur was setting in for the long stay. Not only that, but he soon decided to stop brewing everything except porter. Man was our Arthur when all about it was brewing, eh? Well, I guess he knew something the others didn't. Like pulling a pint of Guinness, good things come to those who wait. And Arthur didn't hurry. Well, he had 9,000 years. Still, within 50 years, the brewery had doubled in size. And within 100, they were shipping out 1 million barrels a year. They have seemed mad at the time, but Arthur knew what he was about. And Guinness has shipped to every corner of the world ever since. Of course, we still keep a drop here for ourselves too.
Here at St. James's Gate, we've been working with Irish barley farmers and maltsters for generations. Over the years, we've perfected the art of roasting at St. James's Gate. We roast at exactly 232 degrees. Any higher, the barley catches fire. Any lower, the beer won't develop its unique character. It's our roasted barley that gives Guinness its iconic colour, taste, and aroma. Here at St. James's Gate, we've been working with Irish barley farmers and maltsters for generations. Over the years, we've perfected the art of roasting at St. James's Gate. its unique character. It's our roasted barley that gives Guinness its iconic color, taste, and aroma. Here at St. James's Gate, we've been working with Irish barley farmers and maltsters for generations. Over the years, we've perfected the art of roasting at St. James's Gate.
Everything's like that.
Brewhouse 4 is one of the most technologically advanced and environmentally sustainable breweries in the world. Our roasted barley gives Guinness its iconic colour, taste, and aroma. Guinness yeast is used for all our new Guinness beers. Hop House 13, Nitro IPA, Irish Wheat, and Rye Pale are among some of these beers. Guinness samples brewed from around the world are sent to St. James's Gate to be tasted for quality. As the largest stout brewery in the world, Brewhouse 4 combines time-honored brewing techniques with modern technology. We are one of the few breweries in the world to roast our own barley on site.
Oh, we didn't hit the barrel.
The heads for the cask are usually prepared during the steaming of the cask. The rough oak staves are transformed into an exact and watertight seal.
I'm going to hang it up too.
One form of transport has served the Guinness Brewery more faithfully and for longer than any other. The first technology harnessed, the horse. Perhaps this is why the horse has always occupied a special place in the hearts and minds of Dubliners. Because from the late 18th century right through to the first half of the 20th, it was the horse and cart that transported Guinness in and around Dublin. The impressive sight of rhythmic trampling in a horse and cart was not only the most effective and popular form of transport, it was an advertisement for Guinness itself, spreading the name and values of the company as well as delivering the cask. With the development of the canals toward the end of the 18th century came a new means of transport. As slowly and as surely as the cargo they carried, the barges made their way throughout the country, floating into the heart of Ireland.
welcome to the tasting rooms. My name is Shane. I'm going to talk you all through this portion of the tour, but before I do, how are you all today? Okay, you can do an awful lot better than that. So I want to remind you, it is a Wednesday. Not a single one of you are in work. Instead, you're all in the Guinness storehouse, the home of Guinness. You're about to have the freshest, most free sample you've ever had in your life. Did I mention it's free? You don't have to pay a single thing for it. So one more time, with all the enthusiasm you have, how's your day today? There we go. So welcome to the first of our two tasting rooms, the White Room. We call it the White Room for very obvious reasons, but it's actually designed to awaken your senses. You see, you're coming from a very dark corridor into a very white, very bright room, and in this room we have these 4 aroma pods, each of which represent a different key flavour found in Guinness, so I'm going to talk you through all of them now. Starting on my left-hand side is malted barley. So the malted barley provides all the necessary sugars in the brew, and it has a lovely cereal or biscuit aroma. Just behind there is the beer esters. So the beer esters are not a physical ingredient found in Guinness, they are a byproduct of the fermentation process. So the beer esters for Guinness in particular are also very sweet, sort of like a lovely butterscotch or a toffee. Moving over now to the bitter side, we have the hops. So the hops are those big 15 to 20 foot tall vine-like plants would have seen on the way in. They grow about 6 inches per day, and they're a natural preservative for Guinness. So the more hops we put into the brew, the fresher it'll be for longer, but also the more bitter the taste will be. Finally guys, last but not least, you have roasted barley. So the roasted barley smells like a lovely dark chocolate or a coffee. It smells like this because we roast our barley in a very similar process how you roast coffee beans and cocoa beans. So all of these 4 aromas, or 4 flavours, come to every single pint of Guinness all over the world, no matter how big or how cute and adorably small. I know, I'm seeing a lot of disappointed faces here, but don't worry, it's not the free pint off for your ticket. That one is upstairs and significantly smaller, so everyone's going to get one of these samples now. But for a chance to win the second free sample, all you have to do is put your hand in the air and answer one question. What is the true colour of Guinness? Hands up? Yes. Absolutely. Round of applause for this lady. Fair play. She gets that question right every week without fail. So as I said, everyone's going to be getting those samples, but our star student is going to be getting 2, but I have 2 very quick rules. First of all, the legal drinking age in Ireland is 18, so sorry. So you can't drink if you're only the age of 18. Myself and my colleagues run what is called a Challenge 25 policy. Now all this means is, if we believe you might look under the age of 25, we may ask you for an ID. If we do, please don't be offended. If we don't, please don't be offended. Once you get your samples, I'm going to ask you, as difficult as it might seem, not to drink them in here. What you're going to do is you're going to get your samples and drink them in the next room through either of those 2 doorways. We'll teach you the proper technique of how to taste your Guinness. And you need to get this in the glass for this to work, so for 20 seconds, you'll need self-control. So whenever you're ready guys, come on up, collect your samples, and I'll see you there. There guys, move in for the door, just be cautious the door's not closed on you. Okay, excellent. So I think that's everything now. So guys, hello and welcome to the second of our 2 tasting rooms in Velvet Chamber. So this is where you're going to learn how to drink your Guinness properly. So the method of tasting is called the retronasal technique. What you're going to do is in a moment you're all going to take a nice big deep breath and a generous mouthful. The reason why I say a generous mouthful is because if you're to sip on a Guinness, you're just sipping on the white nitrogen head that has risen to the top, and that's actually a very bitter flavour, so you always want to go through the bitterness into the ruby red stuff. Once you've taken your generous mouthful, you're going to hold it in your mouth for a moment, swirl it around. Try your best to note the 4 flavours I spoke about in the previous room, and then you're going to swallow and exhale. So guys, whenever you're ready, work away. Now what you should be noticing on the tip of your tongue is the sweetness from the malted barley and the beer esters. As it makes its way to the centre and the sides of your tongue, you should have roasted notes from the roasted barley, and then as it makes its way to the back of your tongue and you come to a swallow, there should be an ever so slight bit of twang, so that when you exhale, it all comes together. Now, for those of you who didn't taste any of that at all you need is practice. You'll get that practice upstairs in the gravity bar for free pints, so don't you worry. So before I let you go, I know those glasses are so adorable and so publicised, but I would really appreciate it if instead you just threw them over in the black trays you make your way through the double doors. But most importantly guys, have a lovely day and enjoy your drink upstairs.
Thank you.
Oh, I had to do it. Oh, heck. Position. Yeah. Anything up there over? That's the center where we came in at. Lane and the original baseball were outside the bus. He's not at the end of the bus there. He's very slow. Stop there.
Well, no, you can't see his signature. There's our bus person. Good guy. Oh, there was an added caption. What was that? Where did that come from? What was it? 1,000 year lease? Is that 9,000. That's what. Where in the hell is the rotate? I know there's a rotate. To get on the bus. How many hell are they?
Like I think a little bit tell that.
Stone walls, archways, churches and great houses. Get your cameras ready so you can look back and remember the special city of Kilkenny. Kilkenny's long history stretches all the way back to prehistoric times. People have lived here through each era, from the Mesolithic right up to the city you see today. The areas, counties Kilkenny and nearby County Laois, were once part of the Kingdom of Ossory. By the 6th century, the church realised the importance of the area and a great monastery was built. The monastery was named after a saint, Saint Canis. This is how Kilkenny got its present-day name. Kilkenny comes from the Irish word Kilcannig, which simply means the Church of Canis. Many Irish place names begin with the word Kil. Anytime you see this, you will know that a church existed in that area. As Kilkenny grew in power and wealth, it drew the attention of the Vikings, who were rather fond of attacking, plundering, and killing anybody who got in their way. One such attack occurred in Dunmore Caves. The marauding Vikings were on their way to County Waterford when they raided the area around Dunmore, forcing families to flee and take shelter in the deep caverns of Dunmore Caves. The Vikings lit fires, hoping the smoke would force the villagers out, but tragically this did not work, and at least 1,000 people died on that tragic night. When it comes to invasions, Ireland has had her fair share. Under the old system of power, each province of Ireland had a king. In the 1166, the King of Leinster, Dermot MacMurrough, lost his throne. He did not accept his loss gracefully. He turned to the Normans for help. Richard de Clare, a great Norman knight, better known as Strongbow, arrived in Ireland, bringing with him soldiers to defeat those who had opposed MacMurrough. Strongbow was promised that he could marry Aoife, Dermot's daughter. This marriage of convenience would become much more than that. Aoife was educated and smart, and she and Strongbow would rule side by side, with Aoife leading Strongbow's troops into battles on many occasions. They built a timber castle in Kilkenny in 1173, and Aoife defended their lands long after Strongbow's death. Their daughter was married to William Marshall. They rebuilt Aoife and Strongbow's castle in stone, and the castle is one of the greatest castles to be found in Ireland today. Under Marshall's reign, the people of Kilkenny received their first charter. Kilkenny was to face many changes when the Marshall family line ended and the Butler family, the Earls of Ormond, became the new rulers. As the Norman invaders settled and married in Ireland, concerns were raised that they were becoming too Irish. The Statutes of Kilkenny were introduced.
If any English or Irish living among the English use the Irish language among themselves, his lands and tenements shall be seized into the hands of his immediate lord.
Henry VIII made a decision that would change Ireland. His ban on Catholicism would see Ireland suffer, but the city would gain prominence thanks to several wealthy merchant families. For a time, Kilkenny became the seat of the Irish Parliament, but it would collapse when Cromwell laid siege to the city. Kilkenny would rally again, and centuries of milling would see Kilkenny become the county it is today. You will see St. Patrick's graveyard. Some of the burials here date to the 17th century. There's also a number of famine victims buried here. Over 1 million people died. 30,000 lives were lost in Kilkenny alone. At McDonagh Junction, the site of Kilkenny's main workhouse, the remains of 900 people were found there and were reinterred in a commemorative garden. Many people survived the famine by emigrating. Over 2 million people left Ireland. Over 80% of the immigrants travelled to the United States, while the rest went to Canada, Australia and England. Looking again to your right, you'll see a fine example of an Irish Georgian house. Butler House is the dower house of Kilkenny Castle. Hello, my name is Lady Eleanor Butler. This house was built for me by my husband Walter. I'm so glad to see the house is still in use today. It's now a hotel and tea rooms, and it has a stunning walled garden through which you can access the castle yard. Ormond College on the right-hand side opened in 1853. It was a teacher training school, opened under an initiative to standardise education in Ireland. In 1939 it reopened as Kilkenny's first technical school, and today it is a school for further education. Looking to the right, you will see Talbot's Tower, the last remaining watchtower of Kilkenny's Great Walls. Kilkenny City was divided into 3 small towns: Hightown, Irishtown and the town of St. John's. It was surrounded by an 8-metre high defensive wall made up of gatehouses and 9 watchtowers. This extensive wall made Kilkenny the largest walled town in Ireland. became Lady Desert in the late 1800s. She was a philanthropist who dedicated her life to charitable works. She built Desert Hall in 1903 for use as a community centre. The building has a distinct look and is a rare example of Irish classical architecture. Lady Desert was a remarkable woman with great foresight. She set up a woolen mill to provide work and built houses for the workers to live in. She also commissioned a hospital, founded a theatre and opened a library. Her library is still in use today and is a fine example of a Carnegie Library. She was active in politics, becoming the first female senator in Ireland. Kilkenny is internationally renowned for festivals. We've everything from comedy, music, food, the arts, and believe it or not, a scarecrow festival. We have a number of amateur and professional theatre companies here. Historical resources provide recorded accounts of actors performing short plays in the middle of the 1500s. The writer of Gulliver's Travels, Jonathan Swift, went to school in Kilkenny College and travelled each day on horseback from his home in Jenkinstown. Berkeley University in California was named after the great philosopher and mathematician George Berkeley, who left Kilkenny in 1685. The White House in Washington, D.C. was built by James Hoban from Cuffs Grange. St Mary's Cathedral, one of the most impressive Gothic buildings in Kilkenny, commissioned in 1842. The building of the cathedral was an ambitious undertaking. It was designed by William Dean Butler, one of the founders of the Royal Institute of Architects in Ireland. It took several years to build, providing work for many of those affected by the famine. Its highest tower is 186 feet high, and it stands out as a landmark across the Kilkenny skyline. When it opened, people came from miles around to see it. It must have been a marvellous sight. The altar was made of Italian marble, which was shipped in from Italy, and the relics of twin brothers St Cosmo and St Damien were brought from Rome. If anyone on board is in the medical profession, you might like to know that St Cosmo and St Damien are patrons of all those who work in medicine. A later altar was designed by James Pearce, father of the 1916 rising leader Padraig Pearce.
Yeah, I'm going to take it here out, please. Uh-oh.
Little bit.
Are we in trouble? Are we in trouble?
Back off. I was going to tell you something, I won't now. A little interesting point about the cathedral here, and one that amuses me. If we look at the time scale it was built, 1841 to 1849, so just at the start of the famine, when the rest of the country was dying, the church decided, we'll build a few cathedrals. Now, it cost £25,000 to build in 1841. So let's put that into today's money. So we'll take £100 from 1841 and we'll move it up to today. That works out roughly about £14,386 in today's money. So phenomenal amount of money when you look back on it. But they did provide food for the labourers.
Oh, wow.
For the labourer, not to bring home to the family. So it's mad. But also out of this country, there was over 200,000 head of cattle, whiskey, grain, potatoes exported out of the country under British military as well. But we can't look back and say that the English were all bad, because we kidnapped St. Patrick back in 460 AD. They forgot we were there 2,000 years before they came. But just, it's phenomenal. History, lads, is phenomenal. And it's money. It's like you passed, when we passed Talbot's Tower back there. Kilkenny was a walled in city. So the wall ran 5 kilometres around the city. 8 metres high and 2.5 metres wide, and the English lived on the inside. But if you had money and you were an Irishman, you could live on the inside as well.
Nothing's changed.
Nothing's changed. It's like St. Mary's Hall here. We'll be chatting about it in a few minutes. There's a little bit about it. It was the only church in Ireland where both Catholics and Protestants worshipped at the same time. Again, the Catholics went in and said, look, we pay ye. And the boys said, okay. What's changed? Absolutely nothing. I mean, we're more laughable about it now then. But I often say history, it's feckin' better left in the past, isn't it?
He needs his own show.
He does. I wonder where he's on that. I don't know. Probably at the local bar, right? Probably. He needs to be a TV star. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The other one's supposed to be normal. Yes, I'm only exactly. My friend's been back with all of them together. There's some friend that comes here like every couple of years. Definitely.
The Black Abbey to the right is one of Kilkenny's oldest surviving buildings. It is a Dominican monastery. The monks were known as the Black Friars, and while the abbey was formerly known as the Church of the Holy and Undivided Trinity, it became known as the Black Abbey after the monks who resided there. The abbey is home to one of the largest stained glass windows in Ireland. Several 13th century tombstones are located in the grounds of the abbey. It is a truly beautiful building and well worth a visit if you have time during your stay in Kilkenny.
I'll look it up. No. My phone number is not my phone number. I got a SIM card. Look. I call weaving this way. Adam. See the foliage is starting to change. Oh, it was changed back in Albany when we left. Yeah. I guess he
St. Canice's church, named in honour of St. Canice, was completed during the 1830s. Records omit the completion date, but we do know construction began in 1824. The church was designed by a well-known architect, William Robertson. He had been hired to add Gothic features to Kilkenny Castle, which you can see later on. Kilkenny has a long sporting tradition and is renowned for its hurling team nicknamed the Cats. Hurling is an Irish sport which can trace its origins right back 3,000 years. Despite being banned under the Statute of Kilkenny, the sport has survived.
Do not henceforth use the planes which men call hurlings, with great sticks and a ball upon the ground, from which great evils have arisen.
Kilkenny has played in more All-Ireland finals than any other Irish county.
For the kids,
We are now entering an area known as the Butts. In the 15th century, it was rules that men of a certain age were to train in the skill of archery, and that they should practice their skills in a public training area called the Butts. There was one slight problem with the ruling. Each man had to have his own longbow, and each landlord was to provide his servants with one each. But there was a shortage of longbows in Ireland. This in turn led to another new law. This one applied to merchants. Anyone importing goods from England was obliged to import the longbows.
know the people you come around and go.
He's turning his neck on.
I'm sure he's done this one.
Bishop's Palace. The building we see today is a Georgian building and looks vastly different from the palace commissioned by Ledred. Today it is the headquarters of the Heritage Council, an organisation tasked with protecting Irish heritage and culture. It can't be seen from here, but behind the building is the Bishop's robing room. Here bishops would get ready and change into their robes before going to the cathedral. But archaeologists have found historical references to bishops having afternoon tea in the room and drinking wine.
He gave you a warning.
So is he?
We ran out of gas. Everybody
Let me tell you about the witch of Kilkenny. Alice Gittler was the daughter of a wealthy merchant. She was a powerful businesswoman who outlived 4 husbands. Each husband left her financially well off, and in 1324 her stepchildren, angered by the wealth Alice had been left, accused her of being a witch and of killing her 4 husbands.
You are stand accused of witchcraft. Witnesses say you have had nocturnal dealings with the devil, that you converse with a demon in the guise of a cat, and use ointments made from dead man's nails, little boys' brains, and worms, and are accused of the murders of your husbands.
Alice feared for her life and fled to England. Her maid, Petronella, was found guilty of witchcraft in Alice's place. Kilkenny is known as the Marble City, named for a dark limestone unique to the city. The marble is world-renowned and was used to make the headstone for Daniel O'Connell, known as the Liberator of Ireland, who fought for decades for Catholic emancipation in the 1800s. As we make our way back towards the main town, take note of the Georgian buildings that line the streets. Of particular note are the double doors with typical Georgian fanlight windows. Many of the other buildings you see have 17th and 18th century foundations.
Still confused. That was the advantage of the bus. Oh, it's cheap. Oh, yeah. 20 cents cheaper. It's about $1. They said it's 4 times.
In on the left is the ruin of St. Francis's Abbey, which was built as a monastery in the 1200s. Records tell us that the monks began making ale, using God's gift of good water. Now, in medieval times, ale was used to quench thirst and hunger. If truth be told, times haven't really changed that much, and ale is just as popular now as it was in the time of the monks. The famous Smithwick's Ale was brewed here in Kilkenny for 300 years. Daniel O'Connell once gave a speech from the upper window of the Smithwick's building, drawing thousands of people to hear his words. to the right and see the magnificent stone building with the great arches. That was once my home. My name is Rose Archer. I was married to John Rose, a wealthy merchant, and we lived there with our many children in the 1500s. On the left side is Kilkenny District Court, which was built on top of a 13th century castle. It opened as a prison in the 1500s and became a courthouse in the late 1700s. The large balcony was used by many as a place to give speeches, including the great Countess Markovich, who received the freedom of Kilkenny in 1917. Kilkenny's most attractive features is the shop and pub fronts, many of which retain their traditional 19th century fronts. Hiding behind the building of number 19 is the Hole in the Wall, a tavern that has changed little over the last 500 years. It is here that the original market of Kilkenny traded, marked out by a high cross known as the Market Cross. Here, people could air their grievances, share important information, and be entertained by singers and actors. Stands out amongst the buildings of Kilkenny. It has an Italian-style arcade facade and was once used as a tax office and a toll house in medieval times. Here you would pay your taxes or any other money that you owed to the city. You could also ask for financial help, a medieval form of welfare aid. Today the building is home to our City Hall. Behind High Street, you will find St Mary's Medieval Church, which is now home to the Medieval Mile Museum, a world-class visitor experience with artefacts and monuments that span 8 centuries.
Guinness ads.
Family lived here until 1967, when we gave it to the State of Ireland, restored and opened it for visitors.
Kilkenny is a city of great history, architecture and culture. We have shown you the highlights, but we hope that you take the time to wander through our winding streets or venture the steps of the Rain Tower. Visit the castle, pop into Roath House, see the artefacts of the Medieval Mile Museum, or stop for a pint of ale in one of our many traditional pubs. There is so much to do in this great marble city. Enjoy exploring every bit of it. Thank you for travelling with us today and have a wonderful holiday in Ireland. And as the Irish saying goes, Slán Abhaile agus go maithríoh Bóthar leat.
locked in on this.
No, that's it.
Oh, that's it. Wrong side. Wrong side.
So you want to come through just a little bit more, just to make sure there's space for everyone there.
Productions.
Now folks, you're all very welcome along to the actual factory floor here on Waterford Crystal. So I mentioned before there are four main crafts of crystal making: blowing, cutting, sculpting and engraving. Blowing is the first one that we'll be coming across in a few moments. But the blowing craft is all about getting the raw crystal from its raw form into its final shape. And they do that by taking it out of a tank furnace and shaping the piece with wooden tools. The wooden tools get made in this area, which is where we're starting the tour. This is the moulding department, and it's an entirely carpentry-based department, as you can see. Now, most companies will outsource the work that happens here, but we actually have carpenters that work on site to make these kinds of things. The kind of tools that they make here can be seen here. This is the kind of thing that will put a curved edge on maybe a drinking glass or a vase, maybe a bowl or a decanter. It all depends on what they're working on, what the schedule says is being made in a given shift. That's what we call pre-shaping the crystal, just using these tools to give it its beginning shape. That will be used to shape the neck of a decanter, if you can imagine that peculiar shape that the necks of decanters sometimes have. Once the piece has been pre-shaped, in order to get it into its final shape, it needs to go into a mould. So that's the second thing that they make here. This is an example of a wooden mould that's carved here. You can see it's in the shape of a trophy. That's the old Irish Open golf trophy, one of the many sports trophies that we'll do every year here in the factory. So once the piece has been pre-shaped, the blowing department, the blowers that work up there will take the crystal and they place it down inside the mould, which closes up around it. And they blow air into the centre of the piece of crystal, which is the process that you'll see in the next area. But while it's getting air blown into it, it's actually expanding in size. So while it's getting bigger on the inside of the mould, it's taking on the shape of the inside of the mould. So then when it comes out of its mould, you have a piece of crystal that's in this shape of the trophy. In this case, our drinking glass, decanter, vase, bowl, no matter what it is, it goes through the same process. Behind you on the ground and in the corner over on the shelves, you'll see all these different wooden moulds that have been used over the years. The one thing they all have in common is the centre of them is burnt out. You can see that black charred look. And that's because of the intense heat of the actual molten crystal itself. When the crystal comes out of the tank furnace, it comes out at a temperature of 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit or 1,400 degrees Celsius. And it's extremely, extremely hot. And it stays flexible while it's at that heat. When it cools down, it solidifies. But that's why we only use wooden moulds for specially commissioned items or things that we're not making a lot of. Because quite frankly, the piece will just burn out. The shape will burn out in these wooden moulds after 7 to 10 pieces. So it's not really sustainable to use them for drinking glasses that we're making dozens or hundreds of. And so for making those production pieces like glasses, bowls, vases and decanters, we use cast iron moulds. Cast iron is heat resistant, it won't lose its shape, and it actually lasts over 50 years, believe it or not. So they can use it again and again and again. But the wood is more cost efficient, so they will use it whenever they can. It's also sourced locally. Everything you're seeing here is beech wood. There's an abundance of it here in Waterford and in our neighbouring county of Kilkenny. But we don't like talking about Kilkenny because they're our rivals in our national sport of hurling. So that's enough about Kilkenny. We're going to move on up to the blowing department. On the way up there you'll see an example of designs on the left hand wall here. That's every piece needs to be designed before we get the physical work happening in the factory. So that will let every department know what size and shape the piece needs to be. The cutters will know what pattern is going on the piece. So that's what the reference point for everything. And then you'll see different specially commissioned pieces and the moulds for them on the left and right as you go up. On the left you have a baseball glove, followed by a firefighter's helmet, followed by the front of a guitar. So you never really know what kind of special things will be commissioned in the factory. We can make all kinds of things. Over on the right there's a Viking longboat mould. So it's actually a massive ship made out of crystal. So we'll head on up towards the blowing department then.
Oops, sorry.
Now folks, so here we are in the blowing department. So as I mentioned, blowing is all about getting the piece from its raw form into its final shape. What they're working on at the moment is champagne flutes. You're seeing one of them being carried away there, that's just been finished. There's another one that's halfway made in front of the craftsman that's sitting down. That's the master stemmer. It's his job to create the stem and attach the foot to the glass. So he has the top half of the glass that's after coming out of its mould. He's heating up the base of it, and that's going to allow him to stretch the crystal out into the size and shape of the stem that he needs, which he'll do in just a moment. Now the large tank furnace where the crystal actually comes from is at the back of the platform in the centre. It's in behind some heat shields just beyond the master stemmer. That's where all the raw materials gets mixed together. And so now you have the master stemmer. He's using a tool in his right hand to stretch the crystal out, because remember, once it's really hot, it is very flexible. So he can actually stretch it out a little bit. The metal rod in his left hand is a blowing iron. That's what they use to blow air into the centre of the crystal. And it actually keeps the crystal attached to it while they're working. So he's rotating that with his left hand. There's a great photo opportunity coming up very quickly, but it happens very fast, so if you want it, you'll have to have your cameras ready now, I'd say. I actually recommend you record the piece instead of trying to take a picture. This will be the foot of the glass being attached to the stem. So another member of the team has gone back to the furnace at the back of the platform, and he's going to bring over a piece of crystal, and they're going to cut that off and attach it to the stem. So this is your photo opportunity here. And just like that, it's done. So that's the foot attached to the stem straight away. And that's the last thing that will happen to the piece. The master stemmer now gets to work on shaping that foot. Meanwhile, over on the far left, we have the beginning of another piece. This is going to turn into the exact same piece. This is just the starting process. So that's what molten crystal looks like when it comes out of the furnace. It's on the end of the blowing iron, and it's being pre-shaped with the wooden tools that are carved in the last area. The craftsman physically blows into the blowing iron to make it expand in size. You can see he's putting a different shape on the piece. That's the pre-shaping finish, so now it goes down into a mould. There's a cast iron mould down beneath him, and it's in the shape of the top half of that champagne flute. So as he blows into the piece expands in size and takes on the shape of the inside of that mould. And now it's coming out and it's in the shape of the champagne flute. It also has a cap on top of it. Every piece has a cap on top of it. The cap keeps the crystal attached to the blowing iron, and then it gets cut off in the next area. So we'll see the finished piece coming down to the conveyor belt on the left here. This is the one we just saw the foot being attached to the stem of. There it is, very kindly being held up for us. And you can see that there's that cap on top of it as well, as I mentioned. So that cap will actually get cut off in the next area. But before it goes to the next area, it has to go into the kilns, which is all the way over on the right, and that's where the piece is going now, as you'll see. Every piece of crystal spends a night in those kilns where it slowly cools down in temperature, because we can't let the crystal drop from 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit to room temperature in one go. It happens so quickly it will crack the crystal. So it goes into those kilns, which you're just seeing that pool go in. That's about 700 degrees Fahrenheit, that kiln. And then tomorrow, after it cools down a bit, it will be taken out and it will drop down to room temperature. That's when it will become completely clear in colour, and then they'll be able to start taking those caps off. So you see there's quite a bit of work going on. This is an entire team of, there's 3 people working on one stemmed glass here.
How many would they make in one day?
And they make a good few dozen, if not a few hundred. Probably with stemmed glasses, a good few dozen. It will all depend on the schedule. They won't do the same thing from start to finish in their shift for 8 hours. And they'll have a schedule of different things. So they'll probably work on larger pieces in the afternoon, smaller pieces in the morning. So earlier on they would have been doing kind of small glasses. They have a certain amount of stemmed glasses that they need to do now. And then they'll probably work on something like vases or bowls. It all depends on what the production schedule is. But if they went 8 hours on the one piece, like a stemmed glass or like a standard drinking glass, they certainly could do a few hundred of them in the blowing department. So here you have the foot being attached to the stem of another piece. So it's the hand-eye coordination of the master stemmer, and it's his skill and judgment that lets him know exactly how much crystal he needs for that foot. And he'll know that based on the design. The design will tell him what size the foot needs to be and what shape it needs to be. That's what he's doing now, he's shaping it. So they're going to repeat that process. We're going to move on up to the next area. We'll see what happens when the piece comes out of the kilns the following day. That's the design champagne flute they were doing. So that's how they know what to make, really. That's how they know the weight of the piece, the size of the piece, the length of the stem, the shape of the foot. Everything comes from the design. Sorry? No. And they'll just do the apprenticeship program. 5 years apprenticeship. That'll be their training.
He was, but he would start talking.
This area is the finishing and quality department, folks. You can see the craftsman is cutting through those caps that are no longer needed now. So he's operating a vertical saw there over to our net. So remember, the caps just kept the crystal attached to the blowing iron for the blower, so we don't need it anymore. So they get smashed when they get cut off. All that smashed crystal goes back into the furnace, it gets melted back down, and then we reuse. There's no need to waste any of the crystal because it's still good once you melt it back down. That smashed crystal isn't the only thing that's going into the furnace though. On the opposite corner of the room you'll see large white bags with blue handles. In there you'll find a mixture of smashed crystal and the raw materials. The raw materials we use are silica slag, which is mined in Belgium, lit arch lead, which is the safest form of lead you can get, and it's imported from the Netherlands, and potash, which is imported from Germany. So when you melt the three of those together inside the furnace, you get that orange glowing molten crystal that the blower for working with in the last area. The difference between glass and crystal as well is the percentage of lead that's in the raw materials. Once it gets past 23% lead in your raw materials, the piece is classed as a piece of crystal. 23% or less and it's a piece of leaded glass. And there's types of glass that will be duller that don't have lead in them at all. The lead will give it its shine, give it its sparkle, it's more of an end product, but it also gives it its weight, so it will be heavier than a piece of glass as well. Then once the piece has the cap removed, it comes down to where the craftsman has moved on to now. He's operating an outside bevel at the moment. So there's a few pieces of equipment there that combine to smooth out the surface of where the cap once was. Then moves over to an inside bevel, which just takes care of the inside of the lip of that glass. The reason he's doing this is because when we take a saw blade through the crystal, it will leave behind rough edges and you'll catch your finger on it. We need to smooth out those rough edges before the piece moves on. That's a Matisse wheel he's on now. So once the piece is nice and smoothed out, it goes to the other side of the room where there's another craftsman at work. That's the quality department. They're checking every single piece for a quality inspection. They're looking for any kind of flaw or imperfection. And if they find any, they'll use the spinning wheel just to the left of that craftsman in the distance. And they try to buff out the flaw, try to correct it themselves. But if they can't fix it and the piece fails the quality check, it's going to what we call a reject piece. And the whole thing has to get smashed on the cap, and it all goes back to the furnace where they have starting again, please. That would be quality inspection number 3. You can imagine they have to get past 6 quality inspections in order to consider good enough to be watered. So we saw the first one when the blowers are checking their work before it goes into the kettle. The second is when it comes out of the kettle the following morning. Love how this is just awkwardly in the middle of this area. That'll probably get moved in a minute. So this area here, folks, is the marking department. So the next main thing to happen to the crystal is the cutters need to cut patterns into the crystal, but they need to know exactly where to cut, where to put their different cuts first. So what we do here, just watch yourself there as that craftsman's coming through. So what we do in this area is we put the pieces up on the turntables that are just in front of you there, with the markers attached to them. And the craftsman working here provide the piece with a geometric grid. So you can see an example of one of those grids on the bowl that's been left out on the right there. And then there's probably one going to go on to the piece that the craftsman is working on there. But those grids will assist the cutters by letting them know the exact length of each cut that they're putting on the particular piece. In the 8 years of training it takes to become a master cutter, they've learned 600 individual cuts. So we need to communicate with them and let them know which cuts are going on which patterns and how long each one is going to be. So it helps keep everything straight and in order. They've also learned over 100 patterns. So the patterns that we put on the day-to-day pieces, like glasses, vases and bowls, those don't change. So things like the Liz Moore pattern and 100 or so more patterns, they've committed them to memory from their training. So they'll actually cut those patterns from memory using those grids as a slight assistance. But if it's not an everyday production piece and it's a specially commissioned piece or a prestige piece or a kind of one-off, like down here there's a basketball trophy, and there's also an American football trophy down here as well. So these kinds of things will be uniquely designed. So they'll be using patterns the cutters have never seen before. So what the craftsman here has to do is study the drawing and the design and freehand sketch out the pattern of cuts going all across the piece of crystal. So every single cut gets its own individual mark, and that adds up to the piece's own very unique looking grid. An example of those unique grids can be seen on the left-hand wall here. There's one shelf all by itself on the left-hand wall. You see the grid on the vases over on the right-hand side of that. So that's a much more complex grid than what's on the piece over on the turntable by the craftsman there. But every single mark means something different to the cutters. So it's all about communicating with them and assisting them. That's why the person that works here, or the people that work here, have to be trained in cutting as well. They need to be able to mark the piece out with the mind of a cutter. So once it is marked out successfully, it goes on down to the cutting department. We're going to make our way down there now. We'll see what the cutters are working on.
Crazy. Amazing. Yeah. You're okay too, yeah? As long as you can see one of the cutters, you're okay. So the cutting department is where the different patterns going on the crystal. You can see the cutters working away up on their wheels. Those wheels that they're using are diamond tipped wheels, diamond being the most efficient way of cutting through crystal. And you might notice they always have water pouring on them as well when those wheels are on. That adds to the efficiency of the cut. You won't go into a cut dry because you end up cracking the crystal in one attack. Probably an entire life. Our longest serving staff now is cutting for 53 years. Yeah. Yeah, this factory stayed open, kept going. Yeah, I didn't work here during the pandemic, but yeah, they kept going. The only thing that was kind of, like you can kind of see they're kind of spaced out in these anyway, you know? Yeah. The only one that you wouldn't have seen kind of here to social distance, that would be blowing. You can't wear a mask while blowing, you know? They kind of, they always go to the same blowing team anyway, so they just kind of stuck to their own team. Yeah.
That can't be done by human hand. I'm not sure if there's a program going on at the moment, but if there is, do have a look. About 8% of pieces will go through the machine and then get partially cut. And then when that precise cut goes in on it, it will be taken out, and the rest of it will be cut up on the wheels by the workers here. So after that, those auto cutting machines will move on down to sculpting and engraving. That's where your specially commissioned items and one-off stuff.
Oh, really? That's cool. That's pretty good. Yeah.
When you get
Food chest is pretty cool, isn't it?
So this end of the factory is the sculpting department and also the engraving department down this very end of the room. Sculpted pieces are your specially commissioned pieces, not your everyday drinking glasses or vases. They start off as plain blocks of crystal, and then they get carved into shape by the sculptors using drills, wheels and saws, which are the tools that are on the walls around us here. As you make your way down, there's a table on the right hand side. It's a sculpting table, so that gives great examples of sculpted pieces. Then the last table on the right, when you get down to the end of the room, is the engraving table. Once a piece has been sculpted and the cutters do the different cuts and patterns, the piece gets sent away to be polished in our service factory. It's the last thing to happen to a piece. In the service factory, they dip the crystal in a combination of acid, and that strips away a layer of the crystal, and it comes back with that glossy, gleaming finish that you're seeing on the finished pieces. So that's when it really becomes crystal clear, as people call it. So then it will finally be able to come down for its sixth and final quality inspection, unless it needs an engraving, which is what happens down this end. And that's the noise that you're hearing. That's a master engraver working away on the left-hand side as you're coming down. All those pieces up over him will be engraved as well. So engraving does writing, lettering, wording, but also imagery, pictures, logos, so all those kind of things. And even that kind of frosted colouring and that opaque look that you see on a lot of pieces, that will be engraving as well. The technique that engraver is using is called diamond buzzing. The tool in his hand is a diamond buzzer, and it's used to draw small images or to do lettering. What he's actually working on, I think, is the Vincent van Gogh's Starry Night piece. So if you look at the pieces up over him, it's the second piece in from the edge. The last piece that you see is over in the corner by me. It's a 9/11 memorial. Have a look at it as you're coming by. It was sculpted back in 2008. It's here because it exemplifies all the different types of work that happened in the factory. When it was made in 2008, every department that we just saw all collaborated on it. So it's a great example of every kind of work that we do. It's one of two of a kind as well, with the other one being on display in the 9/11 Museum over in New York. So do have a look at that. And take your time looking at pieces here. I know people in the back haven't seen some of the pieces on the tables yet. Take plenty of photos if you want. And when you're ready in your own time, just join me out in the corridor behind me. I'll take you out to the showroom, and the last thing I'll show you is the Waterford mark that goes on every piece. It's how you identify a piece as official Waterford.
Stone to the left.
Going up to the Barney Stone.
Нас научат, да, учат. Кстати, у них отличные кирпичи. Да. Ну ничего, вы же не будете брать немецкий язык? Нет.
Yeah, really.
Oh, somebody had to have seen.
Yeah, really.
Well, I guess.
It's more easily defended because they can only come one at a time.
Очень хороший, если нам хочется свалить, то это наш последний шанс. Нет, нам не хочется, нам хочется бить сверху.
Слушай, я не могу поверить, что они сейчас целуют. Ну не может такого быть.
Ну не знаю, у них же там, наверное, какой-нибудь дезинфектант.
То есть лучше целовать дезинфектор?
Лучше, я считаю, что лучше ничего не целовать.
Вот я тоже так считаю.
Ну я уже 2 раза переболела, поэтому у меня играет спокойно, но 3-й раз болеть не буду. Потому что это страшно неудобно.
Вот я думаю, это оно и было.
Exit last chance for before you hit the top of the castle.
На 3 человек на 3 человек пойдем смотреть картинку.
Что на 3 человек?
Туалет.
Нет, я сказал, что это туалет.
Ну как? Ну пойди посмотри картинку.
Тут одно и такое. Представляете?
Смотри, какая капа. Очень похоже на панфлет, наверное. Там тоже. Ну, Ваня понятно, но туалет.
Вот так вот пионерский лагерь там. Смотришь, а еще здравствуйте, туалет наши 70-е. Перед нету все, значит, друг на друга.
Да, очень хотелось пойти в этот, в учительский. Там везде вот дверь была.
You really have to go to get out of bed and come down the pathway.
Конечно, можно я тебя тут слушаю? Я хочу это.